In the heart of New York City, a 6-year-old boy named Etten Patz vanished without a trace on May 25, 1979, as he walked to his bus stop. His disappearance sent shockwaves through the city and soon became one of the most haunting cold cases in U.S. history. For over 30 years, the mystery of what happened to Etten consumed the public's imagination. Was it abduction? Was it a tragic accident? Despite an intense investigation, no answers were found, and Etten's body was never discovered. Then, in 2012, a startling confession from a troubled man named Pedro Hernandez claimed to hold the key to solving the case. But as the years passed, the question remained. Was Hernandez truly the man who took Etten, or was he a victim of his own troubled mind? The truth behind Etten's disappearance would finally begin to unfold, but the shadows of doubt would remain. It was a sunny Friday morning in New York City, and 6-year-old Etten Patz followed his usual routine. He woke up early, had a quick breakfast with his family, and prepared for his walk to the bus stop, just like he did every day. His parents, Stan and Julie, were used to the sight of their son heading out to catch the bus that would take him to school. He kissed his mother goodbye and waved as he made his way out the door, wearing his favorite purple striped shirt, blue jeans, and white sneakers. Etten walked down the busy streets of Soho, a neighborhood that was bustling with life. The air was fresh, the streets filled with the usual sights and sounds of Manhattan. People walking briskly, cars honking, the distant hum of the city. Etten had walked this route countless times before. It was part of his daily ritual, a familiar routine that his parents trusted. He knew the way well, and they always felt comfortable letting him go. That morning, however, something went terribly wrong. Etten never made it to the bus stop. As the minutes passed and he didn't return home, Julie began to feel a sense of unease. It wasn't like Etten to miss the bus. Concern quickly turned to panic. Stan and Julie immediately began looking for him, walking the streets in a frantic search. They checked the bus stop, the street corners, asking neighbors if they had seen their son. But Etten was nowhere to be found. It wasn't long before the police were called. The search for the little boy began immediately. Flyers with Etten's picture were printed and posted throughout the neighborhood, and his face quickly appeared on television screens, his smiling eyes staring back at an anxious public. But despite all the efforts, Etten was gone, and the hours stretched on with no sign of him. The city, usually alive with its usual pace, began to feel quieter as the news of Etten's disappearance spread. This wasn't just another missing child. It was a disappearance that would soon become one of the most notorious cold cases in American history. The initial hours after Etten's disappearance were filled with frantic searching. Neighbors, friends, and even strangers joined the hunt, combing the streets, alleyways, and nearby parks. The police arrived quickly, canvassing the area with questions, but no one had seen anything. The questions started piling up. How could a child simply vanish in broad daylight? Etten had been walking to school on a well-known path, a street he had walked on countless times before. His parents couldn't understand why, after so many normal mornings, this one would end in silence. Julie's heart raced as she called friends, trying to stay calm, but the hours turned into a long, painful stretch of uncertainty. The search intensified, with law enforcement officers questioning everyone in the neighborhood. Did anyone see a car? A person acting suspiciously? But the only thing they could find were unanswered questions. The community felt the weight of Etten's absence quickly. People who had never met him now hung up flyers, hoping anyone might have seen something. But as day turned to night, the worry deepened. No one knew where Etten was. No one knew who might have seen him last. The city that never sleeps now felt eerily still. By the following day, the investigation grew broader. It wasn't just the local police anymore. Federal agencies, search teams, and volunteers poured into the area, combing every inch of the streets. Dogs were brought in to search, but the scent led nowhere, and still there were no answers. Julie and Stan Patz, gripped by fear and exhaustion, struggled to hold on to any glimmer of hope. They held press conferences, speaking out to the public, desperate for any information. The media coverage intensified. News outlets picked up the story, and suddenly, Etten's face was everywhere, on TV, in newspapers, on milk cartons. The world knew his name, but still, no one knew where he was. The investigation had quickly evolved into a national story. The feeling in the air was heavy. This was no ordinary missing child case. Something much darker was unfolding, and no one could predict how or when it would come to an end. The search for Pats, a little boy from Soho, was far from over, but the uncertainty surrounding his fate would soon lead the case into the shadows of a cold mystery that no one knew how to solve. Weeks turned into months, and still there were no answers. The search for became a ghost story in the city. His name was plastered across news outlets, his face framed on posters in every corner of Manhattan. But despite the constant media attention, there was no breakthrough, no new leads. No one knew where was or what had happened to him. What began as a desperate search turned into an agonizing wait, with the family left to cope with a growing, gnawing uncertainty. Parents, Julie and Stan, were devastated. They continued to meet with police and investigators, following every lead, but nothing ever panned out. The streets of Soho, once full of familiar sounds, now felt quieter. Was everywhere in the city's fabric, his face, his name, but never his presence. His absence hung over the neighborhood like a heavy fog. The case became a mystery that no one could solve. The media attention remained, but as the months passed, the stories began to fade. The public's initial shock slowly turned into a simmering frustration. How could this happen in broad daylight, in such a busy neighborhood? Where was The police had interviewed numerous witnesses, and at one point, they had followed leads that took them down many different paths, but each dead-ended. A few individuals came forward with claims of seeing something unusual, but no one could provide solid details. The facts seemed to slip through the cracks, with every clue, every witness account, leading only to more questions. Case was placed in the growing list of unsolved mysteries, each unsolved case leading to another name on a long list of missing children. The hope for answers started to fade, and what remained was a haunting feeling of helplessness. The days blended together for the Pats family, with each passing moment a painful reminder of their child's disappearance. And yet, despite all the loss and confusion, they never gave up hope. In the years that followed, case would take on new significance. His disappearance became a symbol for the safety of children, an emblem of every parent's worst nightmare. Yet, the pain for his family remained as raw as ever. They continued to push for answers, holding on to belief that one day they would get the closure they so desperately needed. But the investigation had become a cold case, with no new information surfacing. The loss felt permanent, an unresolved chapter in a city that had long since moved on. As the years passed, face remained a fixture in the public eye, but the case had turned into more than just a missing persons report. It became a symbol of child abductions across America. Pats was now the face of a larger conversation about child safety. His image appeared on billboards, on milk cartons, and in the news, fueling a national movement. While his family struggled in their search for answers, the public rallied behind them, and case sparked an awakening in the way society approached missing children. In the years following disappearance, lawmakers began pushing for new measures to address the growing concern of child abductions. One of the most significant changes came in the form of National Missing Children's Day, established to bring awareness to the crisis of child disappearances. It was a day that acknowledged the fears that parents faced every time their children left the house. But while the laws evolved and the awareness grew, the Pats family still had no answers about what happened to their son. Then came the creation of the Amber Alert system in the 1990s. The Amber Alert, a tool designed to quickly broadcast information about missing children to the public, was implemented in many states, sparking a shift in the way the country responded to abductions. The awareness created by case would help save countless other children, even though it came at the painful cost of his disappearance. Name had become an integral part of American law enforcement and child safety reforms, and his story helped shape how authorities would respond to missing children in the future. But for parents, Julie and Stan, this progress was bittersweet. They had done everything they could to keep their son's name alive, to force the issue of child abductions into the public's mind. Yet, despite the creation of these new systems, their personal grief remained unresolved. Absence loomed over their lives, a shadow they could never escape. The hope that one day Someone would know what happened to him continued to burn, but with each passing year, that hope grew fainter. In the end, Eden became more than just a missing child. He became a reminder of what could happen when the system failed, of the deep sense of loss that no law could truly heal. His case was no longer just about a family looking for answers. It was about a society learning how to protect its children. Eden's legacy was now intertwined with every missing child, with every safety measure designed to prevent such tragedies from happening again. The pain for the Pat's family, however, remained a constant, an ache that nothing could ever fully heal. In 2012, more than 3 decades after Eden's disappearance, the case was reopened. This time, the breakthrough came from a man who had lived with a troubling history of mental health issues. Pedro Hernandez, a man living in New Jersey, came forward with shocking confession. He claimed that in 1979, when he was a teenager working in a small store near Eden's neighborhood, he had lured the boy into the basement, abducted him, and killed him. Hernandez's confession seemed, at first, like the missing puzzle piece that would finally bring closure to a case that had haunted the city for years. The confession was detailed. Hernandez spoke about how he had seen Eden on the street that morning, and how he lured him into the basement with the promise of candy. He described what he said happened next, the killing and then allegedly hiding Eden's body in an unknown location. Hernandez's words were chilling, but there was one glaring issue: the lack of physical evidence. Despite his vivid recollection of events, there was no body, no DNA, and no forensic evidence linking Hernandez to the crime. His confession, while disturbing, did not match up with the key facts investigators had gathered over the years. This confession, coming so many years after the event, divided public opinion. Many wondered if Hernandez was truly the perpetrator, or if his mental health had led him to invent a story that he believed to be true. Hernandez had a long history of psychological issues. He had been hospitalized multiple times for delusions and mental instability. Some experts believe that his confession could have been a result of a man grappling with his own troubled mind, and that he might have been seeking attention, or even confessing to a crime he didn't commit. Yet, despite the doubts, Hernandez's confession sent shockwaves through the investigation. The case that had gone cold for so long suddenly had new life, and the Pat's family once again found themselves holding on to hope, unsure of what to believe. They held their breath, waiting for the truth to come to light, but it was clear that the answers they were seeking wouldn't come as easily as they had hoped. The police continued their investigation, revisiting old evidence and re-examining everything that had been previously overlooked. But as the months passed, there was still no physical evidence to confirm Hernandez's involvement, and without the body, the case remained shrouded in uncertainty. Hernandez's confession was compelling, but it raised as many questions as it answered. For the Pat's family, this moment was a mixture of hope and skepticism. They had waited so long for answers, and now they were faced with the reality that even when those answers seemed within reach, they might never be truly certain. Was Pedro Hernandez the man who took Eden, or was there something else, something darker, that they still hadn't uncovered? As the investigation continued, one thing was clear. The search for the truth was far from over, and the mystery surrounding Eden's disappearance was far more complex than anyone had anticipated. The courtroom drama began in 2015, with Pedro Hernandez facing charges of second-degree murder for the abduction and killing of Eden Patz. After more than 3 decades of unanswered questions, the trial finally began. For the Patz family, this moment was both a relief and a new wave of emotional turmoil. They had waited for this day for so long, but the road to justice was more complicated than they had hoped. The case quickly became a spectacle, with the prosecution presenting Hernandez's confession as the cornerstone of their argument. They painted him as the man who had taken Eden, describing how he had lured the boy into the basement of the store, where he worked, and then killed him. The confession was chilling, and the prosecution believed that it was the breakthrough they had been waiting for. But the defense wasn't convinced. They argued that Hernandez's confession was coerced, the product of his troubled mind, and that there was no physical evidence to back up his claims. The absence of Eden's body became a central issue in the trial. Without that key piece of evidence, the defense contended, Hernandez's words were nothing more than a story fabricated by a mentally ill man. The emotional toll on the Pat's family was immense. For years, they had lived with the pain of not knowing what happened to their son. Now, they were forced to relive those painful moments in front of a courtroom full of strangers. Their desire for justice was undeniable, but the uncertainty surrounding the confession made it difficult to find peace. Was Hernandez guilty, or was he a man who had simply confessed to a crime he didn't commit? As the trial continued, the legal battle intensified. Witnesses were called. Psychological experts were brought in to discuss Hernandez's mental state, and the jury listened carefully to every word. But the question remained: could a confession stand up in court without the crucial evidence to back it up? The lack of Etton's body was a significant blow to the prosecution's case, and it left a lingering doubt in the minds of everyone involved. After weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated. Finally, in 2017, they reached a verdict. Pedro Hernandez was found guilty of second-degree murder. The Pats family, while relieved that the case was finally resolved, still felt a sense of uncertainty. Hernandez had been convicted, but Etton's body was still missing, and the doubt surrounding the confession remained. The conviction was a step toward justice, but it didn't provide the closure that the Pats family had hoped for. The questions surrounding the case, about the true nature of Hernandez's involvement and the absence of Etton's body, would continue to linger. The Pats family had fought for years to uncover the truth, and while they had finally seen some measured justice, the emotional scars would never fully heal. The trial was over, but the mystery of what truly happened to Etton Pats remained a haunting question. The conviction of Pedro Hernandez in 2017 brought a sense of justice to many, but for the Pats family, it also highlighted a painful and unresolved truth. Etton's body was never found. Despite Hernandez's confession and his subsequent conviction, the crucial piece of the puzzle, the physical proof of what had truly happened to Etton, was missing. For the Pats family, this lack of closure was a constant source of torment. The absence of Etton's body was a haunting element that loomed over the case from the very beginning. Despite extensive searches by law enforcement, private investigators, and volunteers, there was never any trace of him. The city, with all its hustle and bustle, had somehow hidden the remains of a child who had once walked its streets. The unanswered question remained: where was Etton's body, and why had it never been found? For the Pats family, this mystery added to the grief they had carried for so many years. They had lived through the agony of not knowing what happened to their son, but to never have the opportunity to lay him to rest was a cruel fate. Without a body, the family could never have the finality that comes with burial. There was no grave to visit, no place where they could mourn and remember their son. Instead, they were left in an endless loop of speculation and doubt. The investigation into Etton's disappearance had always been filled with holes. With Hernandez's confession, investigators believed they had found the key to solving the case. But even with his detailed account, the lack of physical evidence created a cloud of uncertainty. Did Hernandez truly take Etton? Or was his confession a product of a troubled mind, a desperate attempt to make sense of a past he couldn't fully remember? Without the body, there was no definitive proof to answer those questions. Over the years, numerous theories emerged about where Etton's remains might be. Some believed he had been hidden somewhere in the city. Others speculated that the body had been disposed of in a way that made it impossible to find. No matter how many areas were searched or how many leads were followed, the answer always seemed to slip through the cracks. The absence of Etton's body left the case with a sense of incompleteness, a puzzle missing its final piece. As time passed, the Pats family continued to fight for answers, but the lack of closure weighed heavily on them. They had hoped that the conviction of Pedro Hernandez would bring an end to their suffering, but a lingering question of Etton's final resting place remained unanswered. In many ways, the search for Etton's body became a symbol of the ongoing struggle for truth in a case that had already caused so much pain. For the Pats family, the fight for justice was far from over. They had finally received a conviction, but without Etton's body, without the physical evidence that would confirm Hernandez's guilt beyond a shadow of a doubt, they couldn't fully move forward. The mystery of Etton's disappearance was never truly solved, and the emotional toll on his family remained as raw as ever. The absence of Etton's body left a profound emptiness. The case may have been closed legally, but emotionally, the Pats family would never be able to fully heal. Etton Pats' story, though marked by pain, ultimately became a symbol of profound societal change. His case touched the hearts of millions, igniting a movement for stronger child protection laws and fostering a national awareness about child safety. But for Etton's family, no law or initiative could fill the void left by his disappearance. They had spent decades seeking answers, clinging to the hope that one day they would know the truth about what had happened to their son. The changes that followed Etton's case were monumental. His disappearance was instrumental in the creation of the Amber Alert System, a nationwide emergency alert system designed to quickly broadcast information about abducted children to the public. The alert system, launched in the late 1990s, became a vital tool in the fight against child abduction, and it has helped rescue countless children over the years. Etton's case also led to the establishment of National Missing Children's Day, observed annually to raise awareness and honor the children who have been abducted, as well as the efforts made to find and protect them. While these legislative and societal shifts were meaningful, they couldn't erase the pain that Etton's parents carried with them every day. Julie and Stan Patz have fought tirelessly to keep their son's face in the public eye, to raise awareness, and to make sure that Etton's name would not be forgotten. Their advocacy led to real changes, but the emotional toll of losing their child and never having full closure was an unbearable weight. Despite the changes Etton's case sparked, the core of the family's grief remained unchanged. They never got the closure of knowing exactly what happened to their son. They never had the chance to bury him, to visit his grave, to say goodbye in a way that every parent deserves. The absence of Etton's body and the lingering questions about his abduction left the family trapped in an emotional limbo. Their fight for justice, for the truth, would never truly end. Yet, even in the face of unspeakable pain, the Patz family's resilience became an example of enduring hope. Through the years of public scrutiny, legal battles, and personal heartbreak, they continue to seek answers. Their fight for justice in Etton's case, though legally resolved with the conviction of Pedro Hernandez, was far from complete in their hearts. As the family has often said, no conviction could ever replace the loss of their son, and no law could heal the emotional scars left by his disappearance. Etton's legacy lives on, not only in the laws that were changed in his name, but in the memories of those who continue to fight for the safety of children. His story, though filled with unspeakable loss, also serves as a reminder of the power of public awareness and the importance of never giving up, even when faced with uncertainty and heartache. Etton Patz's case may have brought justice to some, but for the Patz family, the emotional journey remains unfinished. The mystery of his disappearance, the questions about the truth, and the ache of never having his body to lay to rest will always be a part of their lives. They continue to hold on to hope that, somehow, the full truth will come to light, though they know, deep down, that some answers may forever remain elusive. The fight for Etton and for all missing children carries on, driven by the memory of a 6-year-old boy whose name became synonymous with both tragedy and change. His legacy continues to shape the way America protects its children, and his story serves as a haunting reminder that the search for justice, no matter how long or difficult, must never be abandoned.